I love trees. This began as a child when I grew up on the East Coast climbing trees because trees were really a refuge for me. I grew up in a rather large and chaotic household, and when I climbed trees I felt I was protected. I was in the arms of these trees. I later chose to study trees academically. I got my PhD at the University of Washington in forest ecology, and since then have carried out research in the tropical rainforests of Costa Rica and the temperate rainforests of Washington State in my efforts to understand trees better. For me, trees have always been the most penetrating creatures. I revere them when they live in tribes and families, in forests and groves. And even more I revere them when they stand alone. They are like lonely persons, not like hermits who have stolen away out of some weakness, but like great solitary men like Beethoven and Nietzsche. In their highest boughs, the world rustles. Their roots rest in infinity. Trees are sanctuaries. Whoever knows how to speak to them, whoever knows how to listen to them, can learn the truth. They do not preach learning and precepts. They preach, undeterred by particulars, the ancient law of life. When we have learned how to listen to trees, then the brevity and the quickness and the childlike hastiness of our thoughts achieve an incomparable joy. Whoever has learned how to listen to trees no longer wants to be a tree. He wants to be nothing except what he is. That is home. That is happiness. So what I would like to do today is to talk about three aspects of trees and spirituality. First, to talk about how trees are represented and perceived in different religions as I've come to understand them. Secondly, how this relates to Zen Buddhism in particular. And finally, to talk a little bit about some of the actions that we as Zen Buddhists or Jews or Christians or just plain human beings might take to help protect and conserve trees. So in terms of trees and religions, how they've been depicted and portrayed and perceived, I've learned that many religions hold trees in a very spiritual and important way. In ancient Egypt, the tree of life was represented by a large sycamore tree in which the gods would eat fruits from. In India, the god Yama lived in the tops of trees and would consume fruits. And so trees seem to have this be in this particular category of objects in religions, different religions that can either give life or renew life. And we know that's also true in the Christian religion, where as early as the second book of Genesis, God talks about the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil as a central piece of the whole act of creation. The Jews tend to look at trees in a very special way also, and this is exemplified by one of their important religious traditions and holidays, the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, which occurs at the end of January, and essentially it's a celebration of the new year for trees. For example, in the Song of Solomon, we hear that my lover is like an apple tree among trees. I delight to sit in its shade and taste of its fruit. And so here we know that the analogy is something very special, that an apple tree is special, and that all the people of the faith or all the readers of the Bible would recognize that specialness because we all understand how special an apple tree is. Well, what about Hinduism? There are many references to trees. One of them, for example, is the Tulsi tree that grows in the backyard of every good Hindu household. You'll see a concrete urn with a tree that is called the Tulsi tree. And this tree is apparently a tree in Hindu mythology, a tree that a god comes down to earth and marries this Tulsi tree, which is really a symbolic uniting of the god and humans through the medium of trees. And when this Tulsi tree blooms in these concrete urns, that signifies the beginning of the wedding season. So that's another sort of example of how important trees can be to humans. So many religions have references to trees that make them important, and I would like to now talk about some of the aspects of the Zen Buddhism, Zen Buddhist traditions that relate to trees. When we see a tree, how can we relate that to Zen Buddhist precepts or teachings? The form of trees themselves, the fact that they're rooted in the earth and have their crowns facing towards the sky, I think is a very holistic way of reminding us that although we are rooted on earth, we can also aspire to what is in the heavens. And Rabindranath Tagore, who was an Indian poet, wrote of this, I think, very beautifully and simply, and he wrote, "Trees are Earth's endless efforts to speak to the listening heaven." The whole idea of breathing, of meditation in the Zen tradition, which is central to achieving enlightenment, that as you sit and meditate quietly, you're aware of your breath coming in and out, and that helps you come to a state of enlightenment, of satori. Well, trees themselves breathe in and out. They are able physiologically to take in carbon dioxide and to breathe out oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. And so at their most basic, trees are about breathing in and breathing out. And in fact, the connection there is that the word spirituality and spirit comes from the Latin root spirare, to breathe, and spiritus, which means breath as well as spirit. So the connection between breathing, between spirit, and between spirituality, and in the case of Zen Buddhists, the case of meditation, of breathing in and out, I think is a very close and important one. A third way that Zen Buddhist precepts come into our knowledge of trees involves stopping, involves silence, involves this Buddhist idea of what's called samantha, a stopping, a calming, a contemplation. And because trees are rooted in the earth and can't move around, and because they have no voice themselves in which to speak, trees always remind me of quiet and of silence. So there are some things in many religions, including the Zen Buddhist traditions, I think, that allow us to think about spirituality and trees in one breath. And what I would like to point out is that trees are valuable to us not only for their ecological values of maintaining biodiversity, of hanging on to carbon and stabilizing world climate, of giving us unbelievably important, economically important objects like lumber and paper and wood for sculpture and art, but also for these spiritual values that I spoke of, reminding us of the connection between earth and sky, giving us a reminder of the importance of breathing in and out, giving us a reminder to stop, to contemplate, suggesting that there is form and emptiness in everything that we see, and finally to remembering the hidden places within us that we might share also. What I would ask is that as people leave here, as they move around in the next few days, weeks, months, to keep that image of their special tree in mind and to associate them with some of these values, ecological, economic, aesthetic, and spiritual, and so that when there's an opportunity to conserve or protect, to join an organization like the Nature Conservancy or the Audubon Society or a local group to save and conserve trees, that you'll think of the importance of trees in a spiritual way and remember and do whatever you can to save them.